I don't think this is going to take very long. I've streamlined this assignment pretty well, and I figure we could just work on it together as a group. So I have also pulled this over into Replit. So this is an example of a form that has some pretty cool things in it. So how many of you have worked with HTML5 forms? Nobody?
I used the thumbs up emoji. Did you?
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I guess it doesn't show. Never mind.
No, I don't see it. That's sad.
Oh.
So forms are very, very important when it comes to collecting data. And this is an example of a registration form. It has some basic information, name, email, password, confirm password, and profile. There are many things that you can add to a form. I took out the part which was a birthday question. It was a birthday, and if you were under 13, you had to have parental consent and things like that. And there was a lot of jQuery UI stuff that was added into that, and I didn't want to complicate the code any more than it needed to be. But so back in the day, before HTML5, we had to validate everything in JavaScript. So you guys are lucky because HTML5 has these little things in it that allow you to include in the attribute. Hold on, let me see, where did my thing go? Okay, here we go. That allow you to include something along the lines of required. And when you put that attribute required in, the page will not allow you to submit it without anything in it. Now, the thing with the HTML5 validation is that it only goes so far. It does have a lot of powerful features that you can do if you know regular expressions, which are these big patterning type things, which can be pretty complicated for most people. I don't even understand them. So, but that is built into HTML5. So for things like, let's say I want to make sure that this password field, you know, has 10 characters and contains a capital letter and, you know, a special character and, you know, a number. Those types of things are all done using JavaScript validation. Okay, so if you become a web developer and you are building pages that have forms in them, and I'm talking to you, Ona, this is a big part of user experience. Just this whole concept of, you know, working with this form and having the form make sense to the users, not just the way it looks, but the way it actually functions. So being able to put these things into JavaScript, again, a lot of it can be cut and paste from examples, but when I was first doing this, like I said, we didn't have any of this helpful HTML5 stuff, and we had to code everything from. Once you did it one time, you would literally just save those snippets of code and be able to cut and paste them into your projects in the future. So reusable code. That's why if you code it good the first time, you can come back. I mean, registration forms are something every website has to have. So you save your code and you can reuse it. It's really great. Okay, so all of these, there's nothing too crazy in these form fields. We have a lot of classes. You'll see that not only does it say it's required, but then there are classes for required. And the JavaScript code will be sending some feedback back to the user if they get something wrong. So let me give you an example. If I was to just click register, I'm going to get, this is feedback. Field is required, field is required. Now in regular HTML5, if you just use the required and you're not doing any JavaScript in the background, you'll see sort of like a text bubble almost come up that says this is required, right? So you're seeing a couple things here. One, if you hover over the box, it will say, please enter your name. So that's kind of like a tooltip sort of thing. That's happening with jQuery or JavaScript. This enter your name and you at example.com, those are both just placeholders. So if I start typing my name in here and I'll put my email in here, and then I come down and try to register. Now it's not giving me any feedback because I've met the requirements or the validation for these first two. But now it's telling me make sure your password has at least 8 characters. So it's recognizing there's nothing in here. And if I was to put in 5 characters, it's still going to show me that message. Please make sure it has 8 characters. Okay, there's 8 characters, and it's obviously, right, that is 8. It's obviously not checking and validating as when I come out of that particular item. But if I click register, now again, I don't see that feedback. So that feedback isn't happening on the fly, so to speak. It's happening when I click register. But let's take a look at this bio thing. When I click into bio, it tells me how many characters I have. And as I start typing, it will count down how many characters I have left. So this is a pretty cool thing, right? And obviously password confirmations, that isn't something that you can do in HTML5. Those have to happen as a result of JavaScript. So in this homework assignment, we're going to use that code as inspiration. And we pretty much have all the fields here, username, so we'll change that name to username, email, password, confirm password, and biography. But the validations are a little bit different. So we want to make sure that they put in an 8-character username and that the email address is in a valid format and that the passwords match and are at least 7 characters in length, and that the biography text area doesn't go over 300 characters. So those things are pretty much what it's doing now, but I want you to go into the code and make those changes. So if you wanted to fork this, we can take a look at the JavaScript that is attached to this. And this is pretty in-depth, and again, it's very similar to what I was saying, that it allows you to reuse this code, and it's not necessarily tied to every single item in here. So it will tell you, it breaks down this A, B, C, D, E, what's happening, and they just do some generic checks. And then there's a section where they're actually doing custom checks. So this is basically just taking all of the form items and seeing which ones are meet the validity requirements or not. So for example, this one, these are all kind of calling other functions, so it gets a little complex to kind of go through and follow along where everything's going. But here's an example of the custom validation. So here it says if not validate bio. So in this case, we want to come in and take a look and try to find that function, validate bio. So I'm going to go scroll through until I find validate bio. I think it's towards the end. Here's the custom validation. So validate bio, it tells me it's getting the element by ID. So does that tell you, is this jQuery or is this JavaScript? Or does it seem like a little mixture of both?
JavaScript.
So yeah, you can tell because of that get element by ID that it's definitely JavaScript here. But I think there might be, because I had to pull in jQuery, so there might be some jQuery somewhere in here as well. But so what's happening here is we're getting the information for bio. We're checking to see if it meets that 140 characters. But in our case, we want to make sure that it's 300 characters. So in this case, I'm just going to change everything that says 140 to 300. And I'm going to need to update that if it's in the web page itself. But basically, it's just saying if it's not valid, then we're going to send that feedback message back that says, please make sure your bio does not exceed 300 characters. Okay, so that's all this part is doing, is it's just checking the length, the bio.value.length, and making sure that it's less than or equal to 300 characters. Okay, this next one is validating our password. And then what were our requirements for our password? Does anyone remember?
8
7.
characters? Oh.
7. Yeah, so we are going to change this from 8 to 7, but this is also where we would put some information about if, right here, we're just checking the length. So we're not doing any of these weird checks, but all those websites that have all those complex checks, that would all happen in this validate password. So it might be fun if you are on a website and they're making you do some really crazy password validation. You should try and find that bit of code and see what their validate password looks like, because it might be interesting to kind of see what's happening here. Now, this is all just going through and processing those error messages. So instead of us having to write out every single one of these, it is calling another function called set error message, and it's passing along the element. So anywhere you see EL, he likes to call elements ELs, and then the message. So instead of us having to write, find this element and go and replace it with this information, what are we using here on line 148? What does that look like? Yeah, that is jQuery, right? The giveaway is the $sign. And so this is saying, basically go ahead and store this information and go get the error message, replace it. So everything in here, this is all jQuery. So instead of using JavaScript, you can use the combination of JavaScript and jQuery together, and it will work fine. Okay, so remove error message. So if everything is right, you can call and remove the error message. Validating types. We are, again, this is checking for an email, and this is the regular expression stuff that I'm talking about. See, I don't know how anyone can memorize these things. These weird combinations of symbols and stuff, they all basically represent like certain characters in the on your keyboard and stuff like that. So this probably, it's looking for an @, it's looking for a period, and a 2 or 3 digits after the period. So again, they say it's a rudimentary regular expression that just checks for a single @. So as long as you put an @ in, it's going to pass that validation. And if it doesn't have an @ symbol, then that's where it's going to give you that valid email message. So a lot of people get confused and think that I just put something like that in and click register, it's not gonna pass that. But I could just put something like this in. Let's see if it passes. Oh, so it clearly has to be somewhere in the middle. Let me see if I do something like, I guess that doesn't matter because that'll just be, could just be a domain name. Let's see if that passes. Okay, so they consider that a valid email address, which clearly it is not. A lot of people are under the mistaken assumption that validating an email means that you're saying that that email address is an actual working email. And that is not the case, because this form is not going to go out there and make sure that your email address is actually a valid email address. What do we need to do for that to happen? How can we validate an email address by guaranteeing that that email address is actually a working email address? Is there any?
Actual email?
What was that?
Sending an actual email?
Right, sending an actual email. So that is the only way to validate that an email address is an actual email. I could put anything in here and it's not going to mean anything to anybody. So don't be mistaken that when we're talking about validating email, that means it's an actual email address. The only way we can do that is to send a confirmation email and make the user click some button that has their unique information stored to it so that it connects us back and basically confirms that line of communication that they received that email. Okay, so then with the password, let's see if we see, we did the password length. Do we have a password check that they actually are the same? Okay, validate password. If it's, okay, so validate password, this is only checking for the actual length. We need to see where they're actually checking to see, it's weird, where they're actually checking. Does anyone see it in their code? You recognize which line it's on? Oh. Nope, that is password. If not, validate password, call validate password.
131.
131, 132. Let's see. Validate password. So yeah, that's still just looking at password. Is it not? Because we've got the confirm password too, which let's take a look at what that is. It's called password, confirm password. So do you see anywhere in the code that they're referencing confirm password and checking to see if they're equal? Let me just go through the beginning here again. I mean, I guess we can do a control F.
Yeah, I did that on confirm. Nothing came up.
Nothing came up. Yeah. Well, let's check that out then. Maybe they didn't do that, which seems silly. Let me do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is it even going to block me out for? Nope, it totally processed it. So this is not a functioning thing here, because the password field, it validated for 8 characters, but the confirm password should also validate for 8 characters, and we should confirm that those are indeed the same. So we might want to try and add that in to our assignment. Okay, so let's double check that we've got everything we need. So ensure that an 8-character username is input. All right, do we see where we're checking for the name? So let's go into HTML and let's call this, instead of name, let's call it username. Enter your username and username. Please enter your username. It's a bit redundant all over the place here. Label for username. Yeah, there's lots of names in username. So as long as it says username, give it an ID of username. Let's see if that will work. And then we'll go into our script and see if we see any validation on that name. I don't think there is, other than the fact that it is required. Right? I'll do Control F, search for name. Do you see anything? No results. So how can we create something that is going to check that our username is 8 or more characters? How can we reuse some of this code?
Probably with the password, or maybe the the bio where it's well, no, sorry, the password is, that one's the one that has to be a length of 7 or less.
Yeah, I think we should copy the password part here around 131. I'm just going to copy and paste it, and then I'm going to edit this, and see, it says check that the passwords both match. That is totally not happening. Check that the username is 8 characters or more. So we can call this something like validate username. And let's set a var username to get element by ID. I think these are all lowercase, but we can check it. And then valid will be username.value.length is greater than or equal to 8. The only other thing that we have to change is this, the username. And please make sure your username has at least 8 characters. Okay, so is this going to work as is? What do you think? What's your guess? Do we need to do something to make this work? Right, it's not being called anywhere. So let's go find out where we call validate password, which I'm pretty sure is up at the top here. So let's find out. If validate password. So I believe all we have to do here is do the same thing. So again, this is about line 43. We're going to copy and paste this into username. And if not validate username, call validate username. We're going to get element by ID username. Valid dot username equals false. So if it's not valid, we're going to say it's false. Else, we're going to remove the error message for username. All right, so this is still highlighting all of my name search. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and run it and see if it works. So here is my username. I'm just going to put Dina, and I'm going to go down to register. And it says, please make sure your username has at least 8 characters. So yay, I think we might have gotten it. So I'm going to make that over 8 characters and click register, and I don't get the message. So we coded that correctly. Does anyone need me to show them the code again, or were you able to follow along with all that? Why don't you test out yours? So the first step was to make sure that you have the username label, the placeholder, enter your username, ID username. That is the most important part because we're doing the get element by ID. And then you can put the title, please enter your username, is the tooltip right here when you hover over it. Okay, so that is for the index.html. Then if we go into the script, remember we went down to around 131, just probably a little bit beyond that now. And we're using the same pattern as the validate password because we've determined that this password thing is only checking for the length of that password. And we copied and pasted the password bit underneath it, and we called it validate username. Make sure to use camel case with a capital U. We're setting a variable. Whoops. Hold on, my Replit decided to be weird. No, don't kill me. Did you guys have this happen?
Yeah, I hit the saving. If you go up to the saving, hit that, and then it'll take you up, and then go back arrow.
Okay, that's a little scary.
The back arrow. There you go.
All right, let me see. Hopefully it's all still there. Okay, so here is our validate username function. So everybody got that? Again, we're setting a variable document.get element by ID. We're checking the length, and if it's not valid, so if it doesn't pass that requirement, then we're going to call the error message. And if it is valid, it will return valid to the function at the beginning of the file that calls it. So I will navigate back up to the top function where we're actually calling it. And again, we looked at the validate password around line 44 and just copied and pasted that code. I edited my comments and I called it if not validate username, show error message, document get element by ID username, valid.username equals false, else remove the error message for document.get element by ID username. So why don't you take a couple minutes and build out the same process as password for the confirm password field. You shouldn't have to do any edits on the index.html page, but you're going to want to do the same things that we just did for username for the CONF hyphen password. And make sure that that one is also 8 characters. I'll go ahead and do mine, but you can do yours as well. Guess while we're sitting up on this point, I'm just going to start here. it's only 7 characters. I'm gonna see if that works. I don't know about that hyphen. No, it did not work. I'm thinking with the hyphen that it's causing some issues. What would it say? Invalid left-hand side. Yep. It doesn't like my hyphen. Can't put a hyphen in that 54. So right here, valid. I'm just going to take it out then and just call it valid conf password equals false. And then I have another one in the bottom as well. Thing about working with these things is you have to do a lot of testing. So it gives you a lot of experience with testing things. All right. I don't know. Has anyone gotten theirs working? No, I'm going to change the ID to just conf password because I don't like these hyphens in here. So on the index, I'm going to change it to conf password, and then I'm going to make sure that I don't have any in here. Validate conf password. Validate username. So I'm going to get rid of all those. Get rid of that. All right. I'm going to see if that works now. Okay, that's better because I'm getting my error messages. Now it's still letting it go though. What am I doing wrong here? Yeah, where do you see that? In the bottom part or the top part? All right, awesome. Yes, yes, it does. Thank you. I did not check that very carefully. So I did not have my var conf password, and I did not have it set error message correctly either. So make sure you have that conf password in every single one of these. Thank you, Felix. And down up here at the top part, we only have it in the function call and the get element by ID, the valid, and the get element by ID. So let's run that again. Again, you need to be good at typing to do this. Click register. Make sure your confirmed password has at least 7 characters. So there we go. All right, and then it will go ahead and process that.